What's going on, folks? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to try reviewing something a little bit out of the ordinary, and I'm going to review Queen's album from 1980. Now, Queen was a definite pop rock staple throughout the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. The lead singer, Freddie Mercury, had a documentary about him that came out a few years ago, and he had a lot of massive success because of songs like Bohemian Rhapsody and another one, Bites the Dust, and that type of stuff. But to the truth be told, I don't actually know that much about Queen. So I kind of wanted to start diving into the 80s. I'm going to try to do that peppered in throughout this year and further back stuff like that to see some more stuff that I don't know about as like stuff from like the not as stuff from like the 90s and 2000s and 2010 starts to dry up and that type of stuff. So we're just going to start throwing in some of these retro kind of reviews and that type stuff. I want to know more about Queen and see what it's about. Now, this album, The Game, was particularly noteworthy because it had two number ones on it out of 10 songs. That's really good. It went 4 times platinum in the United States, and in the United States, this is Queen's highest selling album. And it's basically, I feel like Queen was a lot more popular in the UK, and I find that interesting just because that's kind of what the Beatles were in that sort of sense. But I do think that there's a number of pretty contingent songs off of Queen that I want to start to mess with and see for myself at how much worth their salt that they are. It's not like I doubt it. I'm not going to say I doubt that Queen doesn't have their share of hits, but I just wonder about it because things were different back in 1980 and 1976 and those type times. So just to be able to see what they labeled contemporary back 40 something years ago kind of makes you question that. But we're going to kind of dive into that and see what's up with it. So, um, the first single was Crazy Little Thing Called Love, and Crazy Little Thing Called Love hit number one on the Billboard 100 in the United States. I kind of see this song as like a woozy, I see this as a picnic, kind of early summer slash late spring type gem. Definitely something where you're kind of enamored with the significant other that you're kind of with and that type of stuff. This really feels like a kind of song that the Beatles would have done back in the 60s. It's real kind of lighthearted and just kind of gauzy and that type stuff. Just would have to say this really feels like a song that would play a lot in April and May and that type stuff, kind of warm weather and that sort of vibe. Really kind of struck me as a song for like a picnic and just kind of having more of like kind of just outdoor festivities, kind of Woodstock, that type stuff, just in that sort of sense. A nice little bop. It deserved to hit number one in my opinion. I like this song, but not as much as some of the more like energetic songs like Another One Bites the Dust and Rocket Prime Jive. But I do like this song. I can see it being kind of a romantic, kind of enamored kind of song in that sort of sense. So the second single was Save Me, and I didn't really enjoy this song. This one really kind of, if the energy on Crazy Little Thing Called Love was kind of lambent, this one is even more so. The energy of this song really gets toned down. This is really more of like a down tempo kind of, a lot more relaxed. I mean, I could almost see it as a blue collar song, but I probably wouldn't listen to this song very often. Yeah, I don't see myself listening to this song very much, but it's not a song I'm going to recommend to you, but it is a single. So, I mean, they did get 5 hit singles. So that's kind of the concept. But this is kind of in a different format. It's just not very lively, I would have to say. But the third single is Play the Game, and I do like this song. It reminds me of kind of like a sulky, kind of blue collar type song, and kind of in between, it kind of feels like a slight karaoke song. I can definitely see this being played at like a karaoke bar, something like that. It does kind of have like a little bit more kind of energy, kind of similar to Bohemian Rhapsody, but not quite as crazy. I just would kind of feel like this is just one where the piano beat on here kind of really feels like something you'd listen to in the car on the way to work, especially back in the early 80s. I can see this just being like a kind of one of the makeshift kind of malaise kind of blue collar type songs where you're in a suit and tie or something like that. But I do like it. It kind of gives off some gloomy kind of vibes, just kind of that 4 o'clock p.m., 4:30, 5:30 p.m. malaise of just going through the day and that type of stuff. Do like that song. I like makeshift and blue collar Queen songs. It's interesting that they had that angle. I mean, once again, I don't know an overabundance about them quite yet, but it's interesting to see that they do have some makeshift songs. Now, the fourth single, I'm gonna go ahead and say this is probably my favorite song on the album, and I saw on Spotify that it has over 1 billion plays. I think a lot of people like this song also. Another One Bites the Dust. I noticed that Michael Jackson was the one that recommended that Queen drop this song as a single, and it's definitely worthwhile. I'll definitely say this is a song that I still hear even today, and definitely has like a real ferocious kind of bop to it. It really feels like a disco electronic type song, has the bass in there, and I would definitely have to say that this is still a hit that can fit in with songs that are kind of more up tempo today. I definitely like the energy. Freddie Mercury's energy on this song is great. It's infectious, it's contagious, and it just overall makes you want to get up or tap your foot and that type of stuff. This really is an easy song to kind of like bounce to and kind of like have like a certain kind of rave energy. Definitely, I would definitely say if they would have had more songs like this, I would have probably scored this album higher. I mean, this is really the most energetic song like this on the album, apart from Rocket, Prime Jive, which Freddie Mercury's only at the beginning of that song, but it's just kind of underneath the impression that they needed at least like nowadays, if this album would have came out in like 2020 or 2022 or something, they would have had like 3 or 4 songs like this song because they would have realized, hey, this is a damn good hit. This really happens to be a thing, but it's very infectious. The 5th single is Need Your Loving Tonight, and this one's kind of like a woozy kind of late single that I can see it not I can see this one kind of being ignored compared to the singles that are on this project. It's not quite as blue collar as Save Me and Play the Game, just more lambent and kind of workaday energy, and it's not quite as infectious as another one, Bites the Dust, and it's not quite as sultry as Crazy Thing Called Love, but it does have a certain energy. It's kind of like a malaise kind of summer evening type gem. I can kind of see it being played in a heat wave. This is definitely a summer song in my opinion. It's a backyard kind of summer cookout, this kind of hazy, kind of romantic kind of song in a lot of senses. I do like it. Reminds me of something that AC/DC would do. Definitely was more rock oriented than some of the songs that I remember from this album, or some of the songs that I've heard from this album. It's kind of the thing. So that's a good one. I feel like another one, Bites the Dust and Need Your Lovin' Tonight, are probably my favorite singles, but I do like Crazy Thing Called Love and Play the Game. But I can see the art of Save Me, but it wasn't my cup of tea. But that's kind of the concept about the 5 singles. So it had a number of success. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the songs I recommend to you out of 10. So those 10 songs I recommend to you out of 10 would be Need Your Lovin' Tonight, Crazy Little Thing Called Love, another one, Bites the Dust, Rocket, Prime Jive, and Play the Game. So really the only song that I enjoyed off this album that were not the singles was just Rocket, Prime Jive. And to go ahead and talk about that one, I feel like Rocket, Prime Jive, I really like the intro of this song. It kind of felt at the beginning, it kind of felt like a really woozy kind of night at like a karaoke bar where everyone's drunk and you're just waving your beer mugs in the air and that type of stuff. And Freddie Mercury's just singing, and he really has an infectious intro. He's kind of on the energy that he was on another one, Bites the Dust. It's real kind of spiffy and kind of rosy kind of energy on that song, and then it switches into like a kind of karaoke type song where the energy is kind of similar to Need Your Lovin' Tonight, where it kind of switches into more of like a kind of mid-tempo rock type number throughout the rest of the song. It's pretty good. I do like the concept of that. It's interesting to kind of see it, but for the most part, to complain about this project, there's just way too many kind of down-tempo songs and kind of more songs that the energy just does not match, kind of getting you more lively and up out of your seat. Like I do like the fact that there's some karaoke songs on here and some kind of bar type songs and pub type songs and kind of maybe mild dance club, retro dance club type feels, something out of like a kind of zany dance club from the early 80s or something. But I kind of feel like songs like Don't Try Suicide, Sail Away Sweet Sister, Dragon Attack, and Save Me, the second half of the album is really kind of lambent, and just in a lot of ways it just has like where the energy really gets slumped down. But I'm going to take back Dragon Attack because that one's just kind of like a quirky kind of rock song. But definitely Don't Try Suicide, Save Me, and Sail Away Sweet Sister kind of have like a different type vibe about them. Real kind of more relaxed and that type of stuff. And I didn't really appreciate the energy of Coming Soon either. That one was kind of trying to be like a mid-tempo rock song that just didn't, it kind of felt like filler in a lot of ways. But I don't know. It's good energy. I like what I heard in at least the singles. The singles are very charming. 4 out of 5 of the singles are very charming, and I like what they were trying to do with the extra album cut Rocket. But I felt like this album really needed a jolt of energy, and I feel like that's kind of the concept. Maybe it's just because I'm a millennial and I'm from, like, I was in my 20s in the 2010s and that type of stuff, so I'm used to a different time. But I look after it, I feel like just getting one or two up tempo songs back in the 80s is kind of the concept, where that was kind of the field day that you had, where you just, because I know this album was on vinyl back in the 80s, so this was a vinyl album, so you had to just kind of realize that it was kind of more of, it was just kind of more where you just played that song and then heard it on the radio and went about your day. But I look after it, it's just a very questionable concept to kind of say if Queen would have had another one, if Queen would have had another one Bites the Dust in them to kind of be able to do that, because they definitely had some hits in the 80s. I don't know them at this stage. I would kind of wonder, I mean, because I feel like 4 times platinum is very trite for one of the biggest bands of the 80s and 70s. I feel like if this is their highest selling album in the United States, you've got like Metallica, where their Black album from 1991 went like 20 times platinum. So that completely soars head over heels over like this album. And Queen, for Queen to be an 80s staple and to only go 4 times platinum, like I said, is pretty trite. So it's just odd. In my opinion, it was just because they needed more energetic songs to kind of light up the dance clubs and karaoke bars, like another one Bites the Dust and Rocket Prime Jive, but it just didn't quite have enough energy to really do that. I don't know how things were out in the UK back in the early 80s either, but I just would have to say, I want to say they, like, I looked on Wikipedia, it said the next album after this was kind of more disco electronic type stuff. I'm going to have to get to that one too, but for what I've seen from it, I like what I heard. Freddie Mercury is definitely a very jivey and kind of energetic musician. He has the ability to do it, but it's just kind of underperformed, I would have to say. I was kind of expecting, like, and it's not like, I know because things were different 40 something years ago, but it's just kind of like, hey, these are missed opportunities. But I'm going to go ahead and score this album, me liking 5 songs out of 10. I'm going to go ahead and score this album a 5.75 out of 10. I mean, because I didn't like 6 songs, I'm not going to give it a 6. But because I didn't like 6 songs, I'm not going to give it a 6. But I feel like the fact that I did like half the album, and plus the songs I did like were very charming and had a lot of skill towards them, I feel like that's enough to make me want to up the score a little bit. But 5.75, like I said, the reasons why are the reasons why. And the social score, now that's kind of back and forth. I could almost give the social score a 6, just because it got 2 number 1s and all 5 of the singles can be played, and they probably have gotten a lot of spins. I give that credit, but it just has different energy for different days and different moods and that type of stuff. It's a very varietized project that kind of has that, but in terms of like the dance ready cuts and the ones that make you want to listen to it on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and the weekend type stuff, it's just not very enthused about that. But I know albums were different back in the 80s, so it was kind of vinyl and records where you had to flip the album to listen to the other songs. But that's just kind of the concept. So yeah, 6 social. And the social score, if you don't know, if you're new, if this is the first review you're watching, social score just means how well it plays around your friends or people that you hang out with that you're trying to introduce it to, and kind of say, this is what we're going to listen to and that type of stuff, how well it connects with your social circle. So that's kind of the concept. And in terms of the future, well, Queen is done because Freddie Mercury is deceased and has been for 30 years. But the concept about it is this is interesting stuff. I'm going to see some more about what's kind of going on with it. So that's kind of the thing.